The moment I heard the soft tapping at the window at 2:47 a.m., I knew I wasn't alone. It had been a perfectly normal Friday night. My parents were out at a dinner party, leaving me alone in the house for the first time in months. I'd settled in with a cup of tea and my laptop, watching a documentary on wildlife. The house was quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the wooden floors, which I had long since ignored. I had checked the locks on every door before sitting down, something my mom drilled into me as a kid. Everything was secure. Nothing seemed out of place. Then I heard it. A faint tapping at the window in the living room. At first, I brushed it off as a branch swaying in the wind, but the tapping persisted, soft and deliberate. I paused the video and listened. Tap, tap, tap. I walked over slowly, trying not to make too much noise, and peeked through the blinds. Nothing. Just the dark yard, the faint outline of the trees swaying in the moonlight. I laughed nervously to myself, telling myself I was overreacting. I went back to the couch. Almost immediately, I heard it again, louder this time. My heart started racing. Tap, tap, tap. Then came the faint sound of whispering, almost indistinguishable from the wind. But it wasn't wind. It was words, quiet and fractured, like someone trying to speak through a broken phone line. I froze, straining to hear. The whispers stopped when I moved toward the window. Then, a shadow flickered across the living room wall, though nothing could have been behind me. My laptop screen reflected nothing, just the empty couch behind me. I grabbed my phone and called my friend, whispering into the speaker. "Hey, I think someone's at my house." The line was static, then a click, and a voice whispered from the other end. "I'm inside." I dropped the phone. The whisper echoed from the corner of the room, though no one was there. Panic took over, and I ran to the kitchen, grabbing a large knife from the drawer. Every creak of the floor felt magnified. Every shadow seemed to move. I decided to leave the house through the back door, thinking maybe I could run to the neighbors. As I reached the door, I saw the faint reflection in the glass of a figure standing in the hallway behind me. Just standing, watching. I froze. Then it smiled. Not a friendly smile, a slow, chilling grin that felt wrong in every way. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. I felt rooted to the spot. The figure disappeared just as my parents' car pulled into the driveway. I ran to the door, throwing it open. My parents were shouting my name, confused. I didn't speak. I just pointed to the living room. The room was empty. Nothing moved. Nothing had been touched. And yet, the window had a single tap mark on the glass, as if someone had pressed a fingertip against it and left it there. Even now, I can't explain what happened. I never saw the figure again, but some nights, when the house is quiet, I swear I hear soft tapping, coming from the very same window. The first time I heard the basement door creak open by itself, I thought I was imagining it. But then I realized I wasn't. It was a typical Sunday evening. My parents had gone out to visit relatives, leaving me home alone. I had just finished doing some laundry in the basement and was heading upstairs with a basket full of clothes. The house was quiet, except for the faint hum of the dryer still running downstairs. I placed the basket on the kitchen counter, grabbed a snack, and settled into the living room. The warm glow of the lamp made the room feel cozy. Outside, the wind rustled the trees, and the house groaned faintly. Normal sounds for an old suburban home. About 30 minutes later, I heard it, a soft creak coming from the basement. I froze. My heart skipped a beat. Probably the house settling, I whispered to myself, trying to stay calm. But the creaking continued, slow and deliberate. Footsteps? No, heavier. Something scraping against the floorboards below. I told myself it was impossible. I had just been in the basement. The door was closed, locked from the top. I cautiously walked toward the basement door. The creaking stopped the moment I approached. I pressed my ear against the door. Silence. My mind raced. Maybe I had imagined it. Then, a soft thump echoed from the basement. Something knocked against the wall. Tap, tap, tap. Not random, intentional. My stomach sank. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight app. The light danced along the walls of the narrow hallway leading to the basement. Shadows stretched and twisted in the glow. I noticed something odd. Faint scratches on the wooden door, like someone or something had clawed at it recently. A chill ran down my spine. The basement light, which I had left off, flickered on by itself, casting long, menacing shadows through the narrow window near the stairs. I didn't dare open the door. I ran to the kitchen to grab the largest knife I could find. Holding it tight, I crept back to the basement door. The door was now slightly ajar. I could hear soft breathing, deep, slow, deliberate, from below. I shouted, "Who's there?" Nothing. Just the wind? Maybe. I stepped closer and shined my flashlight into the darkness. A shadow moved across the stairs. Not human. Too tall, too thin, unnaturally silent. It stopped, just at the edge of the light. My breath caught. I stumbled backward. Suddenly, the basement light went out. Silence. I didn't dare move. Then, the basement door slammed shut with a deafening bang. My parents arrived 15 minutes later. I told them what happened. They laughed, assuming I was spooked. I went downstairs to show them the scratches. Nothing. The basement was empty. But the next morning on the kitchen counter, I found a single wet handprint. Not human-sized, but impossibly small. And it was still there weeks later.
They say a dog is the best home security system. But the night 2 men tried to get into my house, my Rottweiler Duke didn't make a sound. And that was the most terrifying part of all. I live in a rural area outside of Olympia, Washington. My closest neighbor is a 1/4 mile down a gravel road, and the nearest town is a 15-minute drive. I'm a wildlife biologist, so I'm used to isolation. I live alone with my dog, Duke, a 120-pound Rottweiler with a bark that sounds like a chainsaw starting up. He's a gentle giant with me, but he's protective. This happened last winter. A massive storm had rolled in, dumping nearly a foot of snow and knocking out the power. My house was running on a generator, and the silence was deafening. It was the kind of quiet where you can hear your own heartbeat. I had spent the day chopping firewood and checking on the property. By 9 p.m., I was exhausted. I built a fire in the wood stove, gave Duke his dinner, and settled into my armchair to read a book by lantern light. Duke was lying on his bed by the stove, his head resting on his paws. It was a picture-perfect, peaceful winter night. The snow was falling heavily outside, muffling any and all sound. Around 11:30 p.m., I decided to go to bed. I locked the front door, double-checked the back door, and made sure all the windows were latched. A habit I'd developed living alone. I called Duke to come upstairs, but he refused to move. He was staring at the front window, his ears flat against his head. He didn't bark. He didn't growl. He just stared, his body rigid. I looked out the window, but all I could see was the reflection of the lantern light and the swirling snow beyond. I figured he had seen a deer or maybe a coyote. I went upstairs alone, leaving Duke by the fire. I didn't fall asleep right away. The silence was too heavy. I lay in bed, listening to the creak of the house in the cold, and that's when I heard it. Not a sound, but the absence of a sound. The crackling of the wood stove downstairs had stopped. It had been fed an hour ago. It shouldn't be out. I got out of bed and crept to the top of the stairs. The house was pitch black. The generator was humming outside, but the downstairs was silent. I called out, "Duke?" Nothing. Not a whimper, not the clicking of his nails on the hardwood. For a 120-pound dog, he had vanished into the darkness. I grabbed my phone and used it as a light, descending the stairs slowly. The living room was empty. Duke's bed was there, but he wasn't in it. The fire was out. The air was cold and still. I was about to go to the kitchen when I noticed the front door, but the doorknob, it was slowly, silently turning. Someone was trying the handle from the outside. I watched as the knob turned first one way, then the other. A test. I backed into the kitchen, my mind racing. Where was Duke? Why wasn't he barking? I fumbled for the back door, intending to run to my truck, when I saw them. Through the window above the kitchen sink, I could see the backyard. Two figures in dark parkas were standing by my generator. One of them had his hand on the fuel line. The other was looking directly at the house, holding something long and metallic in his hand. They had cut the power. They had disabled my only light source and were now trying the front door while the other stood watch in the back. I was trapped. I ducked below the counter and dialed 911. I whispered my address to the dispatcher, telling her that men were trying to break in. As I was talking, I heard the front door chain rattle. They were trying to slip it. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely hold the phone. Then, I heard a sound that made my stomach drop. A low, happy whine. From outside, I peered through the blinds of the kitchen window, looking towards the front porch. Duke was sitting on the porch steps, his tail wagging slowly. He was looking up at one of the men, who was now standing on my porch, having abandoned the door. The man reached down and scratched Duke behind the ears. My dog knew them. They weren't strangers. They had been here before. The man on the porch looked directly at the kitchen window where I was hiding and gave a small, casual wave. Then, he and his partner walked calmly down my driveway and disappeared into the snowy woods. When the police arrived 20 minutes later, they found Duke waiting patiently on the porch, still wagging his tail. They investigated, but the snow had already covered the men's tracks. The deputies told me it was likely someone scoping the place out to rob it, but they couldn't explain why my dog was so friendly with them.